Good day. My name is Rachel Diego, and our first topic is about exploration, analyzing discourse. As we said in section B1, there are basically three different ways of looking at discourse. Discourse as language beyond the clause, discourse as language in use, and discourse as social practice. Each of these three different ways of looking at discourse can lead us to ask different kinds of questions about the texts and interactions that we encounter in our social lives. A view that sees discourse as language above the level of the clause or the sentences leads us to ask what makes this text or a conversation a text or conversation rather than just a random collection of sentences or utterances. What holds it together so that people can make sense of it? A view that sees discourse as language in use leads us to ask, what are people trying to do with the text, or how do we know? Finally, a view that sees discourse as a matter of social practice and an ideology lead us to ask, what kind of people are the authors of these texts or the participants in this conversation trying to show themselves to be? And what kind of beliefs or values are they promoting? Consider, for example, the text that is printed on the cardboard sleeves that comes wrapped around the cup of coffee that you buy in Starbucks. So we have here an example. So although these texts seem to be rather straightforward and in some ways trivial, if we apply the three perspectives of discourse that we discussed in section B1, we can start to see how complex it really is and how it relates to all sorts of non-trivial aspects of our daily lives. We might start by looking at how this text is put together in a formal way. First of all, we would notice that there are three different sections, and so can ask ourselves how we interpret these three sections as going together and how we interpret the separate sentences in each section as relating to one another. So one way we're able to make sense of this text is because of certain grammatical features in it. For example, we know the pronoun us in the second sentence refers to this name Starbucks in the first sentence. And this helps us to link these two sentences together. Also, the sentence in the second section, first ever post-consumer fiber cup, 60%, post-consumer fiber sleeve, and the first sentence in the third section, intended for single use only, are incomplete. What they really mean is this cup and sleeve are the first ever 10% post-consumer fiber cup and 60% post-consumer fiber sleeve. And this cup and sleeve are intended for single use only. Since the same bit is left out of both of these sentences, this helps us to relate the two sentences together. After considering a formal features of the text, we might then go to consider what exactly the authors of this text are trying to do. We would see that they are actually trying to do a number of things. For example, in the first section, there are two kinds of things they're doing. One is informing us that Starbucks is committed to reducing our environmental impact, and the second is telling us to do something through the through an imperative sentence. Help us help the planet. Such actions are sometimes not altogether straightforward. For example, when Starbucks asks you to help them help the planet, what they are also doing is asking you to help them make more money by buying more coffee. Third section is of the text also contains some rather indirect actions by giving the patent number of the sleeve. For example, Starbucks is not just informing us but also warning us that the design for this sleeve belongs to them and we cannot use it. Finally, by giving us their website URL, they're not just informing us, but also inviting us to visit the website. All in all, what the company is doing with this text is rather complex and sometimes indirect. They're just trying to tell us about the sleeve or about their company policies. They're also trying to portray themselves as a good company in order to make us want to buy more coffee from them. So this way of looking at this text and texts like it can be useful because not only helps us to interpret the meanings the authors are trying to express and the actions they are trying to perform with the text, but also how the authors are trying to manipulate us into thinking or feeling certain things or feeling certain emotions about Starbucks or performing certain actions ourselves, like ordering a second cappuccino. And so, one way into discourse analysis is to consider a text or conversation from the three perspectives on discourse we describe in section B1. In the following sections, you will practice rule. Our next topic is analyzing texture. As we said in section B2, not only is texture cohesion and coherence necessary to turn collection of words or sentences into a text, but different kinds of texts, like shopping, lists, newspaper articles, and before and after ads, have specific kinds of texture associated with them. So first, different kinds of texts tend to use different kinds of cohesive devices. Descriptive texts, which give information about people or things, scientific descriptions, or encyclopedia entries, often make heavy use of pronouns references, since pronouns allow writers to refer to the person or things being talked about without repeating his or her name. Advertising texts, on the other hand, which describe products, are more likely to use repetition, since there are benefits to repeating the name of the product in this context. Legal texts also prefer repetition to reference, since repeating a word rather than referring to it with a pronoun avoids ambiguity. Analytical and argumentative texts often make heavy use of conjunction, since making logical connections between ideas is usually central to the process of making arguments. So we also mentioned above the different kinds of texts that are used based on different kinds of generic frameworks. They present information or actions in certain predictable sequences and trigger different kinds of world knowledge. Consider the following newspaper article. So we have here an example. So perhaps the most obvious thing that makes the above text a text is we immediately recognize it as a certain kind of text, a news article. This generic framework is triggered by a number of things. First, the most obvious are the circumstances in which we are likely to encounter the text, in this case, on the website of the Times of India. There are other features of the text as well as mark it in a newspaper article so that even when it is transplanted into a different context, like this book, we still recognize it as a news article. So one of the most salient is the headline, a kind of title which summarizes the main idea of the text in a kind of telegraphic language, in which non-essential words like articles and auxiliary verbs are left out. So apart from its overall structure, this text is also held together by a number of cohesive devices that are also characteristics of news articles. It might be useful, however, to first consider the kinds of devices which are not used. There are no instances, for example, of conjunctions. This is not unusual since news articles, as opposed to editorials or opinion pieces, are meant to report what happened rather than to offer analyses or opinions. When news articles do use logical connectors, they are usually of the additive or sequential type. So there are also relatively little use of reference in the text, although there are instances in which relative pronouns points back to their antecedents, Mitra's which hitmaker wisdom, and also places where possession pronouns are used and where the definite pronouns is used to refer back to the specific things. There are no instances in which Lady Gaga is referred to as the she or the mistress is referring to as it. The exception to this relative paucity of pronouns is in a quote from Lady Gaga herself in the third paragraph, in which she referred to herself using the pronoun I and me in her critics using the pronoun they. Rather than using pronouns, the author of this article chooses to refer back to previously mentioned people and objects by calling them different names. Lady Gaga, for example, becomes the eccentric poker face hitmaker, and Meat Dress becomes meaty outfit and meat ensemble. Such rephrasing is not limited to people and objects, but is also used for actions. For example, raised eyebrows, becoming created ripples. So, the reiteration of key people, objects, and concepts in this article, like using alternate words and phrases, creates lexical chains, which not only serve to bind the sentences and paragraphs together, but also reinforce the main messages of such article. In the article above, there are four such chains. First is one formed by the word related to Lady Gaga. Second is the one formed by the words related to mistress. Third is the one formed by the word related to winning an award or elections. And finally, the one formed by the words having to do with shock or controversy. So these four lexical chains taken together to serve to highlight the four main elements of the story Lady Gaga's Mistress, which caused controversy when she wore it. It has been voted as most iconic fashion item by fans. That's all, and thank you for listening.